Hey everyone, welcome to The Flip Side with your hosts Chris and Sean.
We're a podcast rambling about the interesting questions in the world of movement. Welcome back to The Flip Side. Today, your host Sean and I are going to be talking about why spreading yourself thin isn't necessarily a real thing. We're going to be going over why it's better to expand than it is just to stay in one spot. Even if you just really like card tricks and you want to build on card tricks, you would even benefit from spreading yourself out and learning the other things. And we're going to talk about that today.
Yeah, because staying stagnant usually can drive yourself insane pretty quick. I never like being there.
Yeah, it sucks when everyone just goes to the session and they just work on the exact same move over and over. So let's start with talking about that. If you go to the session and you're like, I really like doing cork variations and basic kicks. Okay, so you're just going to go and you're just going to work your basic kicks and your cork variations. But then one day you're going to decide, oh, I'm going to try this double cork variation because I can do the single cork variation extremely well. You're going to have a hard time with it. You're going to be surprised that you couldn't do it. And it's probably because the whole time you weren't focused on doing your single cork variations as if you were going to double variate it because you weren't thinking about potentially leveling up in the first place. Like you didn't have that thought. So that's why you always have to be thinking forward and set yourself, give yourself those goals so that you can actually be progressing and not stay stagnant. Let's see why spreading yourself thin doesn't exist. Can you give me an example of why it doesn't exist?
It really doesn't exist when you're trying to focus on one particular skill. Like, let's say I'm trying to get triple full on floor, but I also need to focus on a couple other things. Though the skills that I'm working on that could be related just to twisting in general, just to get my twists better. Like, let's say I can do double full, I can do full. So if I really get those down for a gymnast perspective, and then I get 2.5 and I really kind of work on getting that, or we also have B twist in there. So if they work on that for some reason, and that's their dance skill, and they get really good at twisting on that axis, then you start to learn how to wrap tighter. You learn how to get in tighter. And then if you're twisting on vault, you have to twist at a different time. You have to think about when you're twisting and how hard you're twisting. So you really focus on doing those skills, getting a tighter twist. And then for tricking, when you're doing your kick, you have to kick in and you have to be able to hold that twist just right to be able to get that kick to come out and be able to chamber correctly. And then after you kick, you have to be able to land correctly. So if you can't twist during that, you're not really going to get a trip. So you want to get trip, you have to kind of spread out the love a little bit on your certain tricks to just understand the basis of twisting a little bit faster and figuring out that timing, figuring out when to start pulling for that twist and how hard.
Totally. That's actually a really good point. Like I didn't even think of it that in depth, but that's actually a really good point. So it's like if you are really good at cork and you want to double cork, instead of getting your cork even better, go to B twist, because then when you B twist, it's like now you have less height and you have to optimize your twist, and then you understand your timing. And it's like when you understand timing in a trick that's harder for you, then understanding more optimal timing in a trick you're already good at is going to really, really increase your skills at it. So yeah, that's I thought you were going to talk about, so I'll mention what I thought you were going to say is, so like for the tumbling side of it, like if you can do full, then you learn 1.5, then you learn 2, then you don't go to 3, you go to 2.5 because you know how to 1.5. So because now you know this piece that's in between, then you can upgrade it. It's like trying to do, you get like cork hyper, double cork, and then you get B twist, and you're like, okay, let me double B twist. Like, how about you B twist hyper first? I know so many people who don't do that. They just think like, well, I can double twist here, so I'm going to double twist here. It's like, yeah, but you missed this progression point. And so it's not spreading yourself thin. It's like, yes, it's another trick you need to learn. Yes, it's another variation. Yes, it takes more time. But what takes more time? Doing 100 double Bs that you don't land, or doing 3 B twist hypers and then like a double B like in 10 turns, or like actually using the equipment and like learning double B off of like maybe a vault table. As long as that's okay with gymnasts. just kidding. So you learn double B just off that, or like on trampoline or something, like getting the motion down, like people are so like not into practicing, in a way that's not, it's like they just want to land it. They don't care about taking the time aside and like landing it in other areas of the gym because it doesn't count. Because like it doesn't count, but it gives you XP. It gives you the experience points that allow you to get it and get it to stick. So
yeah, we do that the same way in gymnastics though. Artistic gymnastics, we usually try to learn things on tramp sometimes if you have a trampoline available, because then it's easier to push, it's a little easier on your joints, and you can take that time and figure out better timing. Even though sometimes you'll have more height than when you're on the floor, you have more fall time, more crash time, you have a better understanding of where you are in the air when you're on the trampoline if you learn correctly. And then you can just translate that into the floor, and when you go over there, you're like, all right, I don't get as much height, but I know how hard I need to go when I go for the twist, when I need to go for the set. So you just got to take those steps over to the floor. And then it just opens up so many more worlds and so many more possibilities when you're just really utilizing the amount of equipment that you can, just mats, safety mats, all that.
And
kind
I bet
of stuff.
Totally. And I bet you have like you mentioned like the different like learning how to twist in different areas, but also like, you did say vault, but I mean I was thinking of like also bars too. Like I
Oh
feel
yeah.
like bars, like when you do, I bet you could like triple twist off a bar way like probably easier. Plus they have pit setups too. So it's like
Mhm.
your takeoff doesn't change. Like you can practice triple full on tramp and then try to bring it to floor, or you can practice triple full on the bar and then just put like a floor under you. Like it doesn't change,
No.
what you're doing. So that's actually really cool too. And then if you can triple full there, you can understand it on tramp. And my favorite thing about the tramp is actually that you just get to like really, really mess with your timing. So like, learning tramp skills is not spreading yourself thin. It's like you get to go on the trampoline and just throw your body however you want and be like, okay, that actually worked or that didn't work. Like you get to spend twice as long in the air on the trampoline, not because you're jumping higher, but because you don't need to land, So like you can, if you're trying to learn full D leg, you don't have to do a full D leg to your feet. You can just do half of a full, land flat on your back in your D leg position and be like, and feel when it feels right to be in the D leg position and be like, oh, this is when it needs to happen. Then you just speed it up at that point instead of trying to do it however you're doing it on floor that it wasn't working.
Yeah.
You don't get to just land flat on your back on floor. And if you do, it doesn't feel like, oh, I get it. It feels like I just screwed up.
Oh yeah. That's the nice thing about trampoline too. Like if you crash on tramp, it's usually a little less scary and it's a lot softer. When you land and crash on the floor, it doesn't feel the best.
Oh, definitely not forgiving. So let's talk about now, like a little bit more in depth about why expanding is like, we touched on a little bit, but I just want to talk about, so um maybe let's go into why spreading yourself thin is possible, like why people think maybe that is real. And I think that goes back to when you first start tricking, you don't have an understanding of what tricks there are to choose from. So
Yeah.
instead of saying like, oh, okay, my goals are like double cork swings, shuriken cutter, and cheat 10. Those are my biggest goals. You just start tricking and you're like, okay, what do I start with? And you don't really know, and you don't know how it relates. Like people are like, oh, start with like BK gainer and tornado and hook. And you're like,
Okay.
okay, and you start doing that. And then they're like, oh, good, you have tornado and hook, learn cheat 7. And they're like, oh, I didn't even know that was like the progression. So it's like really hard for them to progress. And now they have tornado, hook, and cheat 7, and they're still learning gainer, and they don't understand why they're learning gainer, and they don't understand how it relates. So it feels like they're spreading themselves thin. And I think that is where that idea comes from, is because now you start working on your gainer every single session, and then you're like, okay, well, I'm going to go back to my cheat 7 and try to combo my gainer with my cheat 7. And
Oh
then
yeah.
you try to do that, and you're like, oh, I can't cheat 7 anymore. And that's because they didn't realize that there's a connection. They could do swing 3 or swing 7 or swing 9, which is really related to tornado. So instead of maybe jumping right to the gainer, if they found that they're really good at the tornado and the cheat 7, maybe they need to slowly find things that go in between that and the gainer. And then maybe they should do gainer hook instead of real gainer, because if hook kicking is making sense, then maybe they should just do the gainer hook, because it will give them that like spot point in the air. It'll give them that trigger that is like, oh, this relates. And now they're not spreading themselves thin because they made connections. So if they work gainer hook, they're working on the cheat 7, even if they're not doing it, right?
Yeah. So, I mean, I'm on the same point there, where if you're spreading yourself thin when you're feeling like that, if you're focusing on too many things or you don't understand how things relate or the possibility of what's out there really and what you can do, you're really going to overwhelm yourself too fast. And it feels like you're spreading yourself thin because you're like, well, I'm focusing on too many things. Like, I just want this, that, or the other. Like, I just want full in. I just want tornado kick. I want snatch cannon. I want whatever skill you're looking at. But if you're focusing on too many things and not really thinking about the progressions and how they relate, or thinking about different skills and how they can relate back to the skill that you're trying to get to, you're going to overwhelm yourself really fast.
And right. It's kind of like when people talk about how many like dub setups they have. They're like, oh, I have like, 10 dub setups or 15 dub setups. And it's like, to me, it's like, yes, that's like a goal to get like a lot of different dubs from different things. And like, maybe I want like double cork tack dub, or, wrap dub, swing dub, something like that. Or like double P to a swing, double cork. Like, those are cool. But I think it's really like, it's really mentally difficult when you talk about it like that, because they're like, oh, I need to learn a new type of dub. And it's like, no, you don't. You just need to learn how to take off.
Yep.
And then you need to relay your double twisting to this other trick. It's like, when I'm in the zone and I'm like doing a new dub that I haven't done, I'm literally just like, it's a dub. That's all I tell myself. And then I'm like, and then I do it because I've done dub before, and there's some of them are really consistent and some of them are not. And so it's like, when I'm in the zone, you just tell yourself that it's something you already know how to do because they relate so well. So don't overcomplicate it and make it like a completely different thing, which is what I think a lot of people do. And people are like, oh, like, you can do triple twisting. Can you triple cork? And they're like, no, just triple full. And you're like, to me, that's weird. Like, if I can triple full, I can triple cork. Like, I don't know. Like, that seems,
understand that the timing and the how hard to pull and when to pull.
Exactly. That's all it is. It's just a triple twist. Just like if you're taking it from, if you can triple full off the bar in gymnastics, why can't you do it on the floor? Like, it's just so relatable.
Yeah. And I mean, going back to what we were saying before, you just have to take those time with progressions. You have to take time to understand how skills relate back to each other. And then you can unlock all those potential skills and how to understand. Because like you were saying, the zone, when you get into that zone, I actually try to talk about that with the gymnasts quite often, because when you overcomplicate things in your head, you're trying to think of too many things at once. Your brain doesn't have enough time. Because when you're doing skills, you have maybe half a second to a second.
Right.
So if you're thinking of one thing in particular, your body's going to focus on that only thing. And it's not going to be able to do everything that you want.
But that's what I'm saying is like the good thing, right? Like, you're doing the dub and you're doing cart wrap dub, swing dub. But you're like, I've done double cork, swing, double cork before. And you're like you're telling yourself, I've done dub before. So what do you focus on? The cart wrap, nothing else. You don't need to, because you've done that part before. Your body remembers it. It's like, trust your body and let it do what it already can do. And then, like, I mean, right? Do you agree with that?
In a way, yes.
Okay.
Because you're focusing on kind of the initial part of it.
Like, that one change that you're making, because it relates so well to everything else.
Yeah, and sometimes when people focus on one change, though, they'll forget to do other things within the skill that they've already previously changed, and that's where I'm kind of getting at. Where, to me, when I understand the zone, you're kind of letting your body do its thing, and you momentarily, for like a very split second, when you're feeling a certain way during the skill, like when you're doing, like for me, when I was doing back 1.5 punch front, I would feel it come out of the full, spot the floor just with enough time to know that I need to open, spot the floor for the front tuck, and spot my landing to then be able to punch. But after a while, when you get in the zone, you just kind of feel your way through it. You're like, all right, this is the time. And then you just naturally start to let it happen instead of focusing too much on very particular things. And that's where I get people stuck, where I notice people get stuck, is they'll focus way too hard on, like, let's say you're wanting to make your kicks look better, just for an example.
Yeah.
and you're trying to really focus on pointing your toes, but then you literally just keep crashing. And you're like, well, I
Yeah.
focus on making it cleaner then. That doesn't matter. Well, it doesn't look as, sometimes it doesn't really look as good if you're just not trying to clean it up that little bit or make it a little bit sharper. But if you're focusing too much on it and you don't focus then on the takeoff, then you're just going to screw yourself over. Or if you're not focusing on the timing of when to twist and when to kick, you're also going to screw yourself over. So
Oh,
it's like,
I really like this point of view. So you're saying that you can spread yourself thin during the 1 second that you're in the air.
yep.
You're not. We were just talking about how you can spread yourself thin over your training regimen, but you're right. You could spread yourself thin in that 1 second of time. You're like, I need to focus here on this, not the whole thing.
Mhm.
And if you're right. So like you're like, let's make pointing my toes consistent. Then I will point my toe in cheat 12. And then you can also take the opposite route and be like, make my cheat 12 so good that I don't need to focus on the set or the twist. Then at the end, I can focus on pointing my toe,
Mhm.
So yeah, totally. That's really cool. You
Yeah,
can totally,
it's a weird thing because like when we crash, you notice that it feels like it's going longer in time
oh my
because
gosh.
your brain is processing so much extra information because your brain processes obscenely fast.
Yeah.
And when you're going through the skill, when you're just kind of going through it because you've been doing the motion so often, it just feels like that half a second and it just goes by and you're fine. Nothing's bad. But when you're learning that skill and you're trying to focus on too many things or you're crashing, your brain starts to overanalyze everything and it feels like it takes longer because your brain is processing more information to make sure you're going to be safe. And it starts
That's
noticing more things.
That's so crazy. I was literally just seeing Triple Corks the other day. If you guys are listening to our podcast consistently, I was talking about last time how I was having like a little bit of a dry spell for the Triple Cork, and I finally landed that again on Sunday, and but I had some where I would take off, and I was like, I know this isn't the one. Like this is definitely not it. But it's like you're in the triple cork barrel, and you ripped the triple cork, and then you know. So it's like I'm
Oh
in
yeah.
it, and I'm literally just just like, oh my gosh, just waiting forever. It feels like a half an hour just in this twist, and I'm not looking over my shoulder. I'm just like staring straight in front of me, watching. Like it feels like I'm in like a helicopter that's going down. I'm just looking right out the windows of my eyes and just watching everything go by.
It's
Versus when I do take off and it's the correct version, I'm just like, and then I stomp my feet to the floor because I know exactly. And so it felt like so much faster because I was actively putting energy into it and putting it in the right places and then being relaxed in the right spots and like, timing things like, when you're playing Guitar Hero and you're hitting all the notes like that. And but versus the one where you're not and you're like, holy shit, because this song end so that I can do a good one after,
yeah. And that's the crazy thing. That's why spreading yourself thin can happen in so many different points if you're letting your mind kind of travel too much and not really being able to learn how to pinpoint yourself like that. It can happen. It's just usually it shouldn't. You should just let yourself be able to do the things that you're comfortable with and really take that time to just take a step, focus a little bit, then come back. Take a little bit.
So I guess the conclusion there is that spreading yourself thin only exists when you are practicing a new skill and you're not finding the connections or you're not comfortable. Once you're comfortable and following your progressions properly, then you're no longer spreading yourself thin. Everything that you learn is actually adding to all skills,
Yeah.
not just your toolbox, but like your cork is fixing your B twist. Your B twist is fixing your 9. Your double Bs are fixing your 12s, which are fixing your 360 dive rolls. And all these things are actually connected, and you don't need to actually spread yourself thin because you don't need to do every single trick every single session because they're so related to each other. And then one more thing that I wanted to talk about was actually how to rotate these things. So like, yeah, they're all connected, but like how I was saying last episode about how I was doing gainer switch dub and it was so difficult out of nowhere because I had been practicing double Bs and backside 12s so much, and I knew the backside 12 and the double Bs related, which is why I was practicing them both at the same time. But then I went back to G switch dubs and I was like, oh my gosh, that was more difficult than it should have been. And then but now I'm back on that and now it's super super good. So how would a gymnast go about practicing all the events and then like not feeling like they're gonna like lose skills? Like what allows them to not necessarily spread themselves thin? Like how come you're not practicing every single bar skill, every single floor skill, every single vault skill, every single day, right?
So for us, in a way that I've learned gymnastics and the way I learned is really honing on into basics for gymnastics. I mean, going back to the earlier episode, for us, doing basics really just leads into doing almost everything. Like even for us, doing a good back extension to handstand. All right, that leads into giants on bars. That leads into doing clear hip handstands. That also can lead into better block positioning when you're doing vault or when you're doing back handsprings. It'll teach you how to hit a really nice tall handstand position, or even just doing a good round off. All right, that leads into your Chenkos, because if your round off isn't solid when you're trying to do your Chenkos, you are going to crash into that vault table and it will scare the daylights out of you. And
Yeah.
it is terrifying.
So it's
Or
like so the basics are what brings you back to everything. So when you are doing like so do you not necessarily do like giants every day, or do you not necessarily do like if you're competing full in, do you do full in every day, and do you do it at every place, like everything related, or like do you just practice the basic version of that on everything, and then you're
so
like when you compete it you're comfortable with it? Or like I feel like it would make me like doing the basics, like I could do as many tornadoes as I want and make them as high as I want, but when I go to do the cheat 9 and I'm like, oh, I've been practicing my tornado enough, like my cheat 9 will just be fine. But like it probably will, you're probably right, but like I still have that like mental block where like I'm not 100% comfortable with it. Do you get uncomfortable like with your tricks?
you can if you're not practicing them enough. So that's kind of being well-rounded in a way where you want to practice your basics, because if your basics are solid, it unlocks so many more potentials for skills because they lead into so many things, like even just doing a jump full turn or a jump double turn. Like literally a stretch jump 720 can
Yeah, I
sometimes lead
totally,
into
yeah.
understanding the twist where, I mean, yeah, you still have to do your big skills, because if you don't do your big skills enough, you're going to not get comfortable with them again, and then it's going to freak you out. So you have to kind of find that balance time where you don't feel like you're not working your hard skills enough, but you're just focusing on basics. Where what we used to do is pretty much every other day, we'd be doing more of a basics day. And then the next day would be kind of our hard skills day, and really focus on doing like a couple reps of it, usually at least like 3 to 4, just to do them and get them better and work on making the small fixes that we needed. And then the next day we'd go back to a little bit more basics, take it a little bit easier, maybe do a couple big skills. And then the next day do hard skills again. Next day, still kind of a rest day. You do maybe 1 or 2 of your big skill, but you're still focusing more on basics, just so you stay well-rounded, because staying well-rounded is what leads into unlocking all of that potential and all of those skills that you might want to obtain eventually.
Okay, so that makes a lot of sense. Like it's like a very good injury prevention too. You
Yes.
know, you're not just spamming the same thing, and then like almost it's like you're preventing yourself from creating bad habits too. Like I noticed
Yep.
that where like people are like really sore and they're like, I can snapu, and then they like can't. So then they do it really bad, and then they don't like learn it properly, or they create this new bad habit because it's like the only way they can squeeze it in for the day. But then when they go back and they're like healthy again, and then they try to do a snapu, they do it just as bad as they were doing it, because it's like, well, I have to squeeze it in. They like taught themselves they have to squeeze it in. It's like, no, but you can jump higher today because you're stronger today. Um,
Yeah.
so yeah, I could see that. That's really cool. I think I do something really similar. But for tricking, I did mention a little bit last time, but I want to go more in depth this time, or like maybe re-explain it a little bit better. And that's just like I'm back to rotating my tricks again. I just figured out cork swings. I was struggling. I could barely do like cork times 4, but I could do G switch times 10. And I was like, couldn't find the connection. And I was like, I don't get what I'm missing. And then I figured out that I was just staring at the floor too long, and it was just like jarring my body every time. And like, I, I was trying to like break it down to be like, well, I know I don't need to stare at the floor, but then like, what do I look at? And then like, when do I get tall? Like, I just don't want to like fall flat on my back, or like
Oh
expect
yeah.
that I'm going to land tall and then just jam my ankle so bad. And looking down at the floor prevents me from jamming my ankle from my back, but it also makes it not smooth. So the connection that I found was like, are you good at cork? Yes. Okay, just do a cork. And if your cork is good, it just naturally swings. It's not like a
Yep.
G switch where you have to force the switch and then swing it. It just like, you don't switch feet. It just happens. So then I just started like, I did a cork and then I just like, it was good. And I did another cork and I was like, whoa, that was really smooth. And then I did 8. So it worked. So now every session I'm doing swings. To start me off, I just do G switches and I do cork swings. And then I usually do like a combo to like shuriken cutter and a combo to double cork. And then maybe like a snapu. And then usually I put in like a few other basics in there too. So if like the combo is like to double cork, I'll do like V twist vanish 9, hook, master scoot, G switch, double cork, because it kind of hits all my points. And then from there, I'll be like, well, what felt good about that? And then I'll be like, well, my cheat 9 felt good. So let's just make the rest of the session about cheat 12. Or like my G switch dub felt really good. Let's combo G switch triple cork. Or like, let's maybe do a G switch dub combo. So like, by touching on all the basics in the beginning of the session, things that I should definitely have, nothing that takes more than one try. Like it takes one try, I get it all done in 5 minutes, less than 5 minutes. Like I can do all that in 2 minutes for real. Like, and it doesn't drain you at all. Like it's just stuff that you're already good at. Like, don't try to like push yourself to a different level and expect that, because that's when you start the session. You're like, I'm gonna just start my session with 5 G switches, and you're like 2 hours in, and you're like, huh.
I haven't gotten that.
Maybe you should start your session with 2 G switches and then start training your other skills. So just learn how to rotate your skills properly and really feel about what you're doing. And I remember listening to a podcast that Shosei talked on, and they're like, do you plan your sessions? And he goes, no, I just go to the gym and practice what I'm good at. And like, I like go to the gym and I feel out all my basics, and then I hone in on what feels good. And I was like, no wonder he's so good at cart. Like it just feels good all the time. So that's fine. That's also fine. That's how you progress at one thing. But you don't see him spreading himself thin, right? Like he did tack dub times, 5 or 6, and then he's done double cork times like a lot. I think 6. So
and that goes back to being well-rounded. So your basics, once you start leveling up, like we've talked about before, your basics evolve with you.
Exactly.
So like for you right now, your cork has become a basic, where starting tricking, your cork might not be a basic. So for you doing cork times 8, I mean, yeah, that makes sense, because your cork is really dang good.
Oh, I gotta send you the video too. You haven't even seen it. I literally like 2-shotted. It was like cork times 5 to dub, and I was like, oh my gosh, that was so easy. There was no strain on my body at all. It just felt completely fluid. It literally felt like I was like snapping my fingers. Like that was the
best
amount
feeling.
It was the amount of energy I was putting in through the entire thing, even the double cork. And I landed, even when I landed, it felt soft. And this is on like the worst floor in Colorado. Like it's basically like they just put dead floor cheer mats on top of like really brand new springs. So it's super not broken in, and it's super like just thick and heavy. And I was even on that floor itself felt smooth, and it was just like, wow.
Oh yeah. I mean, that's the nice thing though. When your basics really tend to evolve with you and they get really good, and all of a sudden you're just like, all right, I'm just going to try something crazy, and you land it, or you're just like, all right, I'm going to do this basic skill X amount of times in a row and just see how many times I can do it in a row before failure. And you surprise yourself sometimes. Like we used to do front tuck contests where we would just try to do as many front tucks on the floor as we could. I mean, granted, I wasn't particularly great, but I think my record was like 5 or 6 just in a row, just regular punch fronts.
In a row.
And
Oh, wow.
Yeah. And just, it would be hurdle, punch front, punch front, punch front, punch front, punch front, and just try to stay on your feet as long as you can. And that's just how we would play around and just see who could do the most.
Yeah, that's really sick. Like, that's just like your basics. Like, you're just playing with your basics. And like, people hate doing that, but it's like I said, it takes 2 minutes at the beginning of your session. Then you can, lie to yourself the rest of your session, because then you're still going to make progress. Like if you use that 2 minutes in the beginning to really do stuff. And like, I've also done this on tramp too. Like I still do this on tramp. So I take the first 10 minutes to warm up in my session. So the first, I always start on tramp. I just do a quick, like standing double back, standing full in. I do triple full. Now I've been doing quads. I've been one-shotting quads on trampoline, which is insane. I'm trying to get like dub. I don't do swings on tramp as warm up anymore, because now I have swings on floor and it's going to mess up my timing. Like that to me is like a little bit of like a spread yourself thin kind of thing, where it's like, I could like in the beginning, getting dub swing on tramp definitely helped me get dub swing on floor. But now that I have it on floor, it's like, it's so unnecessary. It's like practicing your single cork on tramp for single cork on floor. It's like, now you're at a point where it might hurt you more than help you, but like, it's not going to hurt you that bad unless you start like taking things from it. You're like, whoa, when I
Yeah.
cork on tramp, I do this. It's like, yeah, but you can triple cork. So like maybe it's not relevant, you know? But like
Yeah.
that's it. But you're smart enough that you can try to apply and then take away. Like it's not going to mess you up long term.
Yeah.
So yeah, just focus on the things that are going to help you. Actually just like make yourself like doing the triple full and the quads on tramp is so much less about doing them and so much more about like warming up my body, which is really cool because then it's not like I'm not wasting my time or I'm not like worried about landing the skills or anything. I'm just like super relaxed and just warming up my body and doing the skills that I know how to do. And then when I go to the next session, maybe like what I used to do is I would take 30 minutes on tramp and I would be like, these are the skills I'm forcing myself to get. Like I kind of capped out my tramp skills. Like I'm waiting for my floor skills to catch up. Once I can full in consistently on floor, then I'll probably double full in on tramp as my warm up. And I still want double full in on tramp. It's just like I need to take a tramp day for that. That's not going to be part of my warm up before the session, you know? So that's the kind of thing is like you just got to set some like warm up goals, make that your warm up. Maybe you take 3 sessions to build your warm up. You're like, okay, cork needs to be in my warm up. So you do nothing but cork. And then next session, you do cork first try. Okay, what's my next warm-up skill? Cheat 9. You do cork, then you just do cheat 9s the rest of the session. Next session, okay, cork, cheat 9. Sweet. What's my next skill? And you just keep doing that because now you're just remembering those skills and now you're finding the connection. You bet you learn B-twist right away after that. B-twist around, B-twist shuriken. And then you're like, oh, bet I can cork shuriken. Bet I can cheat 9 fei long. You know, now you're progressing.
Yeah.
Now that's not spreading yourself thin at all. That is finding the connections. You know, yes, taking the time and actually learning your skills instead of just jumping from one skill to another as soon as you land it. You know, you're
build that
remembering.
confidence.
Exactly.
Yeah, so I think we are good there then.
Sweet.
Don't forget to follow our socials at ZidaneCloud on Instagram for me, Sean.
And CHRISPY_TRIX. That's Crispy Trix on Instagram. And I also have another YouTube channel, Trix Fix, TRIX space FIX for more tutorials and other things.
And we'll see you guys next time.